Welcome to the Fossil Fundamentals podcast, brought to you by fossilsuk.com. I'm Byron, paleontologist, geologist, and lifelong fossil hunter. And in this show, we sit down with collectors, experts, and adventurers to uncover the real stories behind the fossils. Okay, so welcome to the Fossil Fundamentals podcast, brought to you by fossilsuk.com. Today's episode is slightly different, because dive into something deeply connected with Yorkshire, the geology, the history, and the craftsmanship. And we're talking about Whitby Jet today. Our guest today is one of the leading authorities in the world of Whitby Jet. She's a geologist, gemologist, researcher, jewellery maker, lecturer, and the director of Eboard Jet Works in Whitby. Today's guest is Sarah Colwell Steele. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So today, what people need to know about is everything to do with jet, and that's why I came to yourself, because you are really the world's expert now on jet, aren't you? So before we start, let's go through the early days. How did you get into geology or fossils, and then how did you get into the Whitby Jet?
Okay, so I came to Whitby on holiday when I was 7, found a fossil on the beach, and obviously was going to be a paleontologist. We came twice a year, every year for years and years. And a few later, I found a piece of jet. At that stage, there were people like Alec Mackenzie used to sit in the marketplace with his fisherman's smock on and his butter knife faceting jet earrings. And I just wanted to be like him. I wanted the smock, the beard, all of it. I then sort of took a bit of a divergence and I decided I was going to be a diamond prospector. I used to go to the British lapidary mineral dealer fairs in the 1970s and 80s in Harrogate. And I got quite friendly with a guy from Oppenheimer Diamonds who probably just thought I was some weird mute child that used to just sit and drool. But I wasn't so interested in the diamonds. It was his kimberlite. So in the end, he gave me a piece of kimberlite with his diamond. He glued a diamond on it. And it was one of my most prized, treasured objects. And then my mother told me that, there was very little call for diamond prospectors in the British Isles. So I really
we for a start, we don't get kimberlite for a start,
no.
But there is opportunities out there, mainly in Scotland for gems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she also didn't really like the prospect of me doing too much travel. So, but yeah, it's always been the geology really that interested me. So I did a undergraduate degree in geology. Still really interested in
Where was
jets.
that at?
Durham.
At Durham, yeah.
It was at Durham. I had attended a National Trust event in York at their shop where a jet worker was there doing a demonstration. And it was a guy from West Yorkshire, actually. I still sometimes see his son. And he showed me how to polish a piece of jet and gave me a little brooch setting.
Right.
So I was about 11 then. So I've been making it from a jewellery perspective since I was 11. And really, when I was about 14, my mum started doing craft fairs in York. So I funded myself through university using jet jewellery.
Right.
Probably at that stage didn't intend to make it my lifelong career. When I graduated, I would have liked to have stayed on at Durham and do a master's or a PhD, but at that time, the supervisor said that, coal science hasn't really moved on significantly. We really, we don't have the expertise to supervise such a project. So I left academia and did various other jobs, had 3 kids. And then eventually when they were at an age where they were at school, I then thought, I might go back to the jet and the jewellery.
Okay,
So I've had my shop here for 16 years in Whitby now. But still obviously really interested in the geology. We know so little about jet. We really don't know what it is, how it's formed, what controls jet varieties, why the jet in Whitby is so good compared with the material elsewhere in the world. There hasn't been any sensible British research done since 1933.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that. It's probably my third chapter. My
I'm
third
motivated
chapter
in it.
in my. I'm just looking at my all my questions now. So it's just like, all right, yeah, we've done that one, we've done that one,
Or,
done that one, done that one. Right, okay.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so let us start with the basics then. For everybody out there, they might not know what Whitby Jet is. I mean, obviously, you and I know what Whitby Jet is, but what is it, and why is it so important to the local area? And basically, the whole geology side of Whitby Jet. Let's go through that first,
yeah.
and then we'll go through like the historical
Okay.
significance of it and everything later on.
So this essentially is the material we're talking
Wow, that's
about.
nice. Yeah, nice big. Wow, look how big that is. Wow.
Um, from a British perspective, jet is defined as fossilized driftwood with a secondary impregnation of bitumen from its surrounding sedimentary environment. That's a 1928 definition, and with a bit of geological tweaking, that seems to make sense for the materials that we have here in North Yorkshire. So that's usually the definition I give for Whitby Jet,
Yeah,
depending
well,
where
I
you
mean,
are in the world.
the oil side of it. I mean, for those who go collecting on the beaches in the Whitby area, in the actual what we call the jet rock series, which is a very specific part of the actual sequence of rocks, where most of the jet is found. Not all, but most of the jet, most of the best quality anyway. It is highly bituminous, and when you crack open a nodule, you either see it oozing out of an ammonite, or you can actually smell it. You can actually smell the bitumen, the oil residue actually in the stone, and that typifies, particularly when I'm on the beach with kids and what have you. I always get them to sniff the rock because I can tell them that actually rock came from that particular layer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes absolute sense looking at the geology. Certainly, if the jet rock, as you say, that's the origin of the
Yeah,
oil in that
yeah,
method.
yeah. So
Um,
so the so the so the driftwood was obviously land plants, land
yep,
tree.
yep,
Obviously, got broken off. Branches and logs would get broken off during storms or some kind of event like that into the rivers, and then get washed down through the rivers into the sea, and then be as driftwood is today, drifting along, and then at some point it then would get waterlogged, too waterlogged, sink down to seabed, and then get covered over millions of years
mhm,
to this thick black substance, isn't it?
yep, yep, absolutely right.
Can you show us that again? And because I think well, I think from that particular piece there, people can see that it's almost like a black glassy like material, isn't it?
I think I gave this piece a bit of a polish. I won't lie. Let me just
Well, that's what it just shows you how easy it.
and polish these.
But
Again,
even that, you
yeah,
can see the
yeah,
kind of shininess of it. It's
yeah,
almost like I kind of try and tell people it looks a bit like black toffee.
yes, yeah,
Black opaque toffee,
yeah.
I would say black opaque glass, but I mean we'll come back to glass later. But it's not anything like glass. But geologically, um, we would call we don't. It's not. Let me get me words out right. It's not a. It is a fossil, but we term it a mineraloid rather than a mineral, don't we? And what's the difference between that?
Yes, the whole nomenclature with these materials is really problematic,
Yes,
and
yeah,
that's part of what I'm looking at really, because there are a number of problems going on. For a start, the three-letter word jet covers about 40 species,
yeah, yeah.
um, which we'll probably come back to some of those. But even geologically, we don't have a word in English to describe a lot of the materials that I research. So there will be an indigenous word in another language, but it will
Yeah, yeah,
translate into English as jet. So
yeah,
if I am saying jet specifically, I'm talking about something that started life as a fossil driftwood. You've then got some sort of chemical alteration. In the case of Whitby, that's its relationship with North Sea oil. In other areas of the world, a different relationship that's forming it. But either way, you get this high compression, a really homogeneous material, as you
yeah,
said, that
yeah,
looks a bit like a really good quality broken plastic, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like to use the word vitreous because it doesn't have a glassy luster, but it breaks with this shell-like fracture,
Yeah,
a
the
conchoidal
conchoidal
fracture
fracturing, that's the
that we
best. I
talked
mean,
about.
that's the
Yeah,
way I find it is I look for that kind of shiny surface on the
yeah,
side, and then
yeah,
that kind of it breaks
yeah,
like glass breaks with that conchoidal
yeah,
fracture,
yes.
and that is easier to spot. And then obviously you get the sometimes you get the bark impression on top of it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Let me go through these.
Structurally, internally, there's nothing to see without serious magnification.
Yeah,
All the structures, you macroscopically, you just can't see
yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thin section, yes, but generally we don't want to thin section it. Certainly in archaeology, which is where I work now predominantly, we're not going to do destructive testing. But macroscopically, with your loop at low magnification, you
yeah.
see nothing.
No,
Um, it's
no,
just a black, homogeneous, fine-grained material.
no, no. And it leading question. But is there any quick tests or signs that collectors can use when they're out in the field to make sure that it is jet and not something else? Because obviously I said it's a leading question
Mm.
because we're both shop owners in Whitby and we both get asked the same question all the time. So, but for those people who haven't been into Whitby and into the shops, what's the best way for them to find it?
So yeah, you're best to look because it's quite lightweight. It's got a low specific gravity. It washes in with the tide. So we're going to look to see firstly where's the seaweed washing in because if there's no seaweed there, you're not going to find any jet. And then you get these patches of little black bits on the beach. So that's the sort of general area we're looking for. And then you've
Yeah,
got to get your eye in to know
yeah,
exactly what you want to look for because 95% of the black carbonaceous
absolutely.
materials on the beach are not Whitby jet, unfortunately. We've got all these other weird and wonderful coal species, a hell of a load of barbecue coal,
Yeah.
burnt twigs and stuff.
Yeah, and
Um,
you get a lot of washed up detritus, like
yeah,
plastics, black plastics, and all sorts of stuff as
yeah,
well
lots of different black
from
plastics
ships
even.
and what have you
Yeah,
as well that
yeah,
can mimic it. But yeah,
yeah,
so you're looking so basically on the foreshore as the
yeah,
tide goes out,
yeah,
it would then start to settle on the beach, and if you look for black patches of black sand and things like that. In amongst that, there might be some little pieces of Whitby jet, or if you're very lucky, you might find a little bit bigger pieces of jet. Um, um, and that's one of the ways. So you're basically looking through all the seaweed, looking for the jet. Um, I mean, I think the biggest piece I ever found was probably about that kind of size, probably, and that was just underneath the abbey. Um, but I mean, the pieces you've been showing me have been obviously the much bigger logs eventually. But most of the pieces you tend to find tend to be like kind of like 20 pence piece size
yeah. If
pieces.
that,
That's
yeah.
kind of if that.
It's a rare commodity. It's
Yes,
difficult
yeah.
to find. We are not tripping over it on the beach.
No, no, no. Everybody
I've got
thinks it's black gold, don't they? But
yeah.
unfortunately, it's not. That's
Yeah.
not the case.
No,
Unfortunately,
unfortunately. Yeah.
no,
Yeah, we've
no.
not had there have been no mining rights issued since about 1900. So something like this is mined jet. This is what the
Yeah, yeah,
Victorians wanted.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're not gonna come across one of those on the beach,
yeah,
unfortunately. Well, I
yeah.
never do. I'm not lucky.
No,
Occasionally
no.
we get children in that come into the shop and say, "Oh, is this jet?" And they've just tripped over something the size of a house
Yeah,
brick.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, it
It's
never happens to me.
yeah, highly unlikely. I mean, like you said, most of the rights for. I mean, that's a whole issue that I don't really want to get
Mhm.
into. But
No.
But the whole time is whenever I say to anybody about fossil collecting, and it goes for jet as well, that you're only allowed to look through loose pebbles on the beach. And that's the best way to find some of the jet anyway. I mean, most of my best pieces have always been just in the right areas and looking and searching for that. And actually, I find that a sunnier day is actually better for finding it, because it just glistens a little bit better than
Yeah,
than
yeah,
than than, than a
yeah,
dull day,
yeah.
because it's more glassy like. What's the biggest piece you've ever found?
Well, again, like you say, not that,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get quite excited if it's the
As I
size of
mean,
a
it's not exactly thick either. I mean, the pieces you've shown me have been like,
Yeah,
this kind of thickness, which is
yeah,
unusual. I mean,
yeah,
most things
no,
are very, very flat and thin, aren't they?
they are. She says, desperately trying to find a flat. Yeah, so something
Yeah,
that
that's more
thickness,
more the thickness that I'm used
that's a
to. Yeah,
piece that's
and you
not
can
been in
see
the sea long.
you can almost see the bark impression on that one as well.
You can, yeah,
And
you've got a bit.
occasionally
Yeah,
you'll get ammonites imprinted on it, and other fossils imprinted on the surface.
but
That
maybe
shows. Yeah, you can see that one. I mean, you can see
quite good.
the impressions of the ammonites on there as well. That's a
Yeah,
lovely specimen. That is. Yeah,
yeah, that's a nice bit.
yeah, yeah,
But
and
yeah,
that
something
shows
like
also
that
the
again.
bark as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But again, that's not that thick. But
no,
I suppose what you're looking for is slightly thicker material anyway, because that's otherwise you get a lot of wastage in what you do, and we'll probably come back to that later anyway. But
yeah.
uh, so with Whitby Jet, it's been such a huge cultural history attached to it as well, and
Mm.
let's talk about that a little bit. How far does it actually go back in history? And it's more associated with the Victorian time, so we can talk about that as well. But how far does it go back, first of all?
So, from a British perspective, jet appears in the archaeological record about 5,500 years ago in the Neolithic, but
Wow.
it's already appears to be a fully formed lapidary product by that stage.
Wow. Okay.
In that,
Okay. Yeah.
we don't see really crude beads then developing into something. We get these amazing beads,
Yeah.
monster beads that are 11 centimeters long,
Yeah.
absolute precision worked. So it's probably not a brand new craft then. And of course,
Yeah.
if we think of how culture spreads, certainly in the early Bronze Age, it seems to be coming down from Scotland, down from Orkney, and coming
Okay.
down
Yeah.
through the British Isles. So certainly in prehistory, most of the jet finds we're seeing initially seems to be in the North Scotland. But what we've got to ask ourselves is, where did that technology come from? And maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
even where did the jet come from? Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
we assume it's Whitby Jet. We really don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Because I mean, as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's any jet up in Scotland, is there? Not that I'm aware of.
There are deposits in Scotland. They're not particularly well known. So Skye and Mull would be the first
But
two
but but yeah, I
places.
mean but that's on the other
Oh
side of
yeah,
the country compared to
certainly. I
Orkney,
mean,
isn't it? So
there are
yeah,
jet finds in Orkney, but no jet deposits.
yeah,
There are
yeah,
jet-like materials up in Brora and up in the very north of Scotland, but
yeah, yeah,
they are visually, to my eye, very different from jet. But
yeah,
where
yeah.
you do have a really good jet culture earlier than that is mainland Europe. So the earliest European jet working dates to the Upper Paleolithic, so maybe 26,000 years ago.
Okay,
So if
wow.
you think we've still got
Yeah,
Doggerland there,
yeah, yeah,
almost certainly, people are coming across Doggerland, certainly in
yeah,
warmer periods.
yeah. So I
Um,
mean, there would have been like hunter gathering, and
yeah, yeah,
particularly maybe around Whitby area, they're probably hunter gathering on the foreshore for fish or
yeah,
shellfish or
yeah.
whatever, and then probably came across this material.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't looked in depth at what happens under the North Sea, but the jet-bearing strata is gonna be out there,
Yes,
it
yeah,
doesn't just
yeah.
stop, at Whitby, the cliffs today.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
we do have the peak fault though, don't we, down at Ravenscar,
yeah,
which
yeah,
which is I believe what's called we're getting very technical geology now. It's called a half graben structure. So it's ideal for containing oil. Is you look for these half graben structures and full grabens, and that's where usually oil tends to accumulate in like a pool in the half graben. So we have got kind of like down throw at Ravenscar, so it might not actually, you might actually go out to sea, but it probably then gets cut off probably at Ravenscar probably.
Yeah,
Currently anyway.
yeah,
But originally it would have been there. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far inland it goes either. I know those jet workings over in near Northallerton, I believe.
Yeah, so the furthest west mines I've been in are close to Osmotherley.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
the entire of the North Yorkshire Moors, right up in the Cleveland Hills, all of that geology really is jet bearing, and the vast majority of jet has been extracted inland at the other side of the North York Moors.
yeah. Wow,
You know,
yeah,
the fact that we associate with Whitby with jet today is really actually a 20th century construct, because
yeah,
when the Victorian industry collapsed, which we may well come back to, and they legally tried to protect the material, they tried to protect the words Whitby Jet. Up till that point, it had
yeah,
just been jet.
yeah,
You know, it could have easily
yeah.
been Gisborne Jet or Osmotherley Jet or, as you
Yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah,
Northallerton
yeah.
Jet.
So
It's purely
a bit
because
like your Molten Maybury pies and
yeah, exactly the
your
same.
Stilton cheese and things
Yep,
like that. You know,
yep,
trying to
yep.
kind of copyright the name, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And if we look at just the geology, the jet rock is way below our feet, really, when we're on the beach at Whitby. We're
Yeah, yeah.
not even in jet bearing
No,
or normal
no,
jet bearing strata
no.
here. It's purely because the manufacturing community has been here since the sort of 1830s, really, that we refer to it as Whitby Jet at all.
Yeah. So we've gone into Paleolithic, and then do you see it in? I believe you find things in Roman times as well.
Yeah,
Um,
so
that's been identified as Whitby Jet, or
well, this is the problem, and my thesis is looking at country of origin determination for jets,
yeah. And
because
is are you able to do that with specimens at all, or is that chemically
sometimes, yeah,
a signature, or
it's obviously it's slightly destructive.
yeah,
So yeah, we obviously think long and hard before we decide we're going to sample an artifact, but I can use my primary sample suites, geological sample suites, to trial the methods,
yeah, yeah,
try and find one that perhaps works.
yeah, yeah.
Before obviously we let ourselves loose on a
Yeah, no,
priceless,
no, quite.
artifact.
No, quite. No, no. Well, I was out, to be fair, I didn't really think about that really. I was thinking more they were actually the stones themselves, but yeah, you're quite right. You know, you don't want to be destroying any artifacts to find out. But no, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, the fact that you'd be able to then say that, yeah, that is definitely Whitby Jet, and that's definitely from France, or that's definitely from Spain, or whatever, or Ukraine, or whatever. That's gonna make a difference, isn't it?
It will make a difference, because certainly at time periods like, so the biggest boom really from a jet perspective is probably the early Bronze Age, so about 3,500 years ago.
Right. Okay.
We've got a sort of, let's say, 1,000-year boom where jet is as valuable as gold.
Wow.
So we
Okay.
find two materials in high status Bronze Age burials, jet and gold. Certainly, these are in, we can maybe say royal graves. There's
Right.
evidence to
Okay.
suggest that some of these necklaces and things that have been buried could be hundreds of years old, generations old when they're buried with this person that warranted being buried with it. And it's only really that into the Iron Age we stop burying people and we start cremating them that we lose sight of jet a little bit. Sometimes we find jet buried next to a cremation burial, but obviously if it was on the body, it's not going to survive
Yeah.
funeral pyre. So the Bronze Age population that are using these items are possibly an incoming population. So they're coming into the British Isles with all their traditions,
Yeah. Yeah.
which going to include the wearing of jet. Now, if these people are coming in from mainland Europe, it is possible that that's European jet that they're using and not Whitby jet. So we don't know where these peoples are from really
Yeah,
genetically.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
what interests me is if I could, analyze these materials and actually we find out that a lot of these early jet pieces are from the Swabian Alps, then that population has come from Germany
yeah,
as we
yeah,
know it
yeah,
today.
yeah,
So it can reveal information about population migrations, just general
yeah,
trade
yeah, yeah,
history.
yeah.
But
Interesting.
jewelry is the only thing really in the archaeological record that we see with people that they did not need. It's not
Yes,
clothing, it's not
yeah,
shelter, it's not food,
yes,
it's personal ornaments. And
yes,
they tend to be very portable objects, so people take these things with them. But I'm hoping that, if we do have a really good database, which we have not had up till now, so nobody has actually taken the time to assemble databases of jets from all around the world. Most academic studies on jet have used one or two specimens. The academic will, and I'm sure you've had it, they'll write to a shop in Whitby and say, I'm doing research, please send me a generic sample of Whitby jet for my blah, blah, blah
yeah, yeah.
analysis.
And there's no,
Um, there is no such thing as a generic
yeah, it's
specimen, as
just
you
it
well
is a
know,
generic
but
specimen. So
they will
you
get
can't
they
say
will
the
get
where it's
one.
from,
One
and
way or the other, they will get one. So if I might say no because somebody else will send it, and then there's always eBay. So,
yeah,
you know,
and you can't guarantee that it is from
no,
where you want it to be from.
no, absolutely not, because most of the materials sold as jet on eBay are not jets at all,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, I've really spent my time to go to the mines, and even here in Whitby, I don't use beach collected material because obviously I can pick up pieces like I showed you. I've got a very good idea that they are out of the Whitby stratigraphy, but then I've been working this for 44 years commercially,
yeah, yeah,
and that's all I do. I only do jet identification day in, day out, because my livelihood depends on me
yeah, yeah,
selling genuine Whitby jet.
yeah,
It
yeah,
Jet workers all around the world can do this, but unfortunately, the academics believe it's not possible to visually distinguish jets from one source from jets from another, and actually jet from
yeah,
oil shale, cannel coal, all these other
yeah, 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 yeah,
materials. Um, so yeah, if we're able to do that, then I think it will illuminate huge areas of history that we, weren't able to really comment on because we assumed all the jet was from Whitby.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You get things
yeah,
written about, oh, they must have gone down from Orkney to Whitby in the warm season. Probably had fish and chips and a donkey ride. Rather, it just doesn't make sense.
no, no,
And as you
but
know,
there might have been some kind of trade
there
or
will have been trade,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it would have been quite, it's not easy to get to access the beaches where the jet is today. When you think about, we use ropes that fishermen are putting in,
yeah,
we
yeah,
use
yeah, yeah,
um, step access that estates are putting in,
yeah, yeah,
holiday
yeah,
parks are maintaining. Most of the best jet beaches are not easily accessible. Some of them aren't easily accessible within a low tide at all.
no,
So
yeah,
you would
yeah,
involve either, abseiling over the cliff, camping out. That would have been more difficult in certainly times
yeah.
gone by.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Um, I have a feeling that the vast majority of the jet we're seeing in the archaeological record is probably coming from beaches way south of Whitby, where it's way more accessible.
Right,
We
okay.
get lots of collectors on southern Yorkshire, Humberside,
Yeah,
Norfolk,
yeah, 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 yeah,
where you don't have the cliff issue. Places like the Wash, because jet is light, the jets and the canals and various materials tend to stick in the mud, so they can literally go and, it will literally be stuck in the clay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there are a few collectors from those next to the woods, and I do suspect that that would be easier in a way for
Yeah,
prehistoric
I mean,
communities.
particularly in Norfolk, they find a lot of amber as well, so it would be in a
Yes.
kind of like it might
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
associated with the amber
Yeah.
as well when they were
Yeah.
finding it. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So so then jet progressed, and then in obviously let's talk about the Victorian times. It became very, very popular during the Victorian times, and tell us all about that.
So yeah, George IV died in 1830. He wasn't well liked. Apparently, he was short, fat, had wandering hands, and terrible halitosis. But nevertheless, when he died, the Lord Chamberlain's office issued a decree, and it said the entire British Empire, which was a quarter of the entire world's population,
Yeah.
was in mourning, and the ornament should be jets. And of course, in 1830, that meant Whitby jet. There was no other materials
Yeah.
under that banner at that time period.
Right. Okay.
So we very much went into overdrive. We had 2 shops prior to that. One of them, I believe, was owned by a Frenchman who'd been a survivor of the Napoleonic Wars.
Okay.
He may or may not have been a jet worker or had jet working connections in the Pyrenees,
In front. Yeah. Okay.
because that's really their heyday. The French market is operational from late medieval right through the early modern period, and actually doesn't die out at all till 1830. So maybe he was a Frenchman, came here, saw jet, thought, I know what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
another
Okay.
connection. He was a Russian guy or somebody that had married a Russian, and they were very familiar with amber. And they did
Oh, okay.
trials,
Yeah.
lathe
Yeah.
turning jet to see if it would lathe turn like amber.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the industry maybe was kickstarted by, let's say, foreign people that had
White. Yeah. White
understanding of
settlers.
jet.
No, white settlers.
White
Like it is
settlers, yeah,
today.
there we say it, yeah, white settlers. So yeah, we go from 2 shops really quickly to 200, as the Victorians described, lapidary factories.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
huge operations.
Yeah. Yeah.
By 1860, well over half the Whitby census said
With jet
half
workers.
of them said they were
Yeah.
involved in the jet industry.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's incredible,
So,
isn't it?
yeah, we can't imagine it today,
No.
what
No.
it must have been like. And the demand for this material on a global scale, a quarter of
Yeah.
the world's
Yeah.
population. And
Yeah.
in the early years, it was fashion. Yes, we think of it as mourning and death and, isn't it miserable?
Yeah.
But
But
this is
it
high
was
fashion.
fashionable. Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like in the Bronze Age, we've
Yeah.
skipped the Roman. Sorry, I took you away from the Roman, but
No,
another
that's all right.
massive boom in the Roman
Yeah.
period
Yeah.
where this is the most fashionable material.
Yeah.
And almost
Yeah.
certainly the young, wealthy Romans, really well-travelled Romans. So 2 of the highest status British graves we've got, both women who we believe were of African origin, so they would have been dark-skinned women,
Okay.
are
Yeah.
buried
Okay.
with these suites of jet and ivory jewelry. And we think that probably what's happened here are these wealthy, well-travelled Romans are using jewelry to sort of as an allegory for the might of the Roman Empire. So they've
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
jet, this exotic material from this godforsaken northern province, as about
Yeah.
as far north as the Romans
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
and they're coupling it with African elephant ivory as far south as they got.
Wow.
And they seem
Yeah.
to be sending this material right across the Roman world. Now, the finds that I've worked on in Syria and Hungary, can I say 100% that's Whitby jet? No, because almost certainly the Romans are also exploiting jet in the north of Spain,
Yeah.
probably even in Germany.
Probably in Germany,
But
probably
the
as well. Yeah.
craze probably does start in England, because in 208, Septimius Severus, the first Black Roman emperor, and his very fashionable wife, Julia Domna, she's Assyrian, and Domna means black in her native language, come to York on holiday.
Well, okay.
And probably whilst they're there, they're
Why?
introduced
Why?
to
It would have been. It wouldn't have been any
mm,
sun. I mean, come
it
on.
was
And it's raining. What was going on?
they were going to
It's like
go on
some
a
kind of Monty Python
the
sketch.
wall. They go into the wall, and clearly York was the, um, best accommodation. But we're told they have a fantastic time. They literally party like
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
208. She's
And
probably a
so
devoted.
maybe some gifts or other of local.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's a woman, incredibly fashionable. She's got these wild hairstyles, apparently, with all sort of curls piled up on top. She has been brought up in the tradition of mystery cults. She is, we're told, a devotee of the goddess Isis. This is the
Okay.
Roman version
Yeah.
of the Egyptian goddess Isis, who's generally depicted in a black toga. So you've got the original goth girl. He
Right. Yeah.
dresses
Yeah.
as Isis's god partner, Seriphis. They build the largest temple to Seriphis outside of Rome in York. And they have these wild fancy dress parties where she dresses as Isis. So if you're attending one of these parties and you're going to bring, I don't know, brace of peacocks, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
the chances are, and we
Or a
think
big
there's
second jet.
already a jet workshop in York in Romany Baracum. So my shop here is the Ebor Jet Works because I'm from York. So I like to think it's the original, the Roman Jet Works, Ebor. I can just imagine somebody presenting her with certainly hairpins made from jet because there's a huge grace for that. She probably gives her patronage to jet. There are jet manufacturing outlets right across Hadrian's Wall. It appears to be an incredibly fashionable thing. Everybody wants to see this couple. Everybody wants to emulate them. And if she's wearing jet, the entire Roman Empire is going to wear jets.
Yeah.
So it's certainly there must have been a very, very buoyant trade.
Yeah.
We don't have any evidence of Roman jet work in here in Whitby. I sometimes do small finds for archaeological companies that are doing, building work, certainly on the east side. I see a fair bit of Bronze Age and Iron Age jet. But it's very difficult to stylistically date the Roman beads because nothing changes. The Victorians do exactly the same styles as the Romans did. So a bead is very much a bead, and it's difficult to know. But certainly at Malton, we have jet manufacturing workshops. So maybe that's the go-to place between York and Whitby.
Yeah. So going back to the Victorian times. So
Sorry, I forgot where I was going.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so we've got these suddenly 200 factories in the initial time. So although it's concerned with the Victorian mourning works in a different way to Georgian mourning, whereas Georgians, it's all about memento mori, remember you're going to die. Whitby Jet is very much fashion first. And second, it's a souvenir of the dead. So you want to entomb your dead person in there. So you're going to put their photo in there, a lock of their hair
or a
in
locket
there.
of hair or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's about carrying the dead with you in your piece. All the major courts of Europe put in orders for Whitby Jet. So the British court very much is the court everybody wants to emulate, and they do. So we're fulfilling these orders.
So what happened with the collapse then? What happened there?
So we really have a boom time of about 75 years. So we starts in 1830. It's good for 10 years. Then the Duke of Wellington dies in 1851, the most expensive funeral of all times. Second big wave of mourning. Then Albert in 1861, Queen Victoria wears jet for the rest of her life. But by 1860, certainly by the late 1850s, we're told there's no jet left on the beach. They've totally exhausted sea-washed jet reserves. Not that it's not still coming out of the cliffs, but they can't find it. So they've heavily started mining. So we've got all these sea mines, which you might have seen, certainly if you've been on the beach.
Yeah, if you've been to Sands End or Runswick Bay, or you'd have seen some of the remains of those.
They're still there, And really, jet's unique from a gem perspective. I've not found any other gem industry that has sea mines. And these things would need digging out every tide. These aren't easy. You've got to make it down to the mine. You've got to start digging. If the tide's been in, it's dumped a shed load of, rubble, and you're digging it out every single day. So they've gone to inland mining. We have prospectors out all over the Cleveland Hills. They're also going elsewhere in the world because jet communities are never isolated from each other. So every period of history, if we have a demand in Whitby, the French and the Spanish industries will kick into play and they will send raw material here.
Yeah, so you're seeing once that decline starts happening, you're seeing the influx of
less quality, perhaps less quality.
That's a much better word than I was going to use. I was going to use fake, but less quality jet.
Very, very good quality jet in all of the other European jet producing nations, but particularly in Spain, they have a jet that's piratized, which You do not want pyrite in jet.
No.
Luckily, at Whitby, we do not have pyrite because
No.
all of our sulphur's organic. It
Yeah.
can't bond with the iron. It can't make pyrite within the fabric of the jet anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in Spain, they have a variety that is absolutely laced with pyrite.
Yeah. Which
That's
will
probably what they
probably
sent
react.
us, to be
Yeah.
fair. I'm sure we would have done the same to them. But we
Yeah.
also had Whitby manufacturers that had mining rights in Spain. So the Whitby people themselves were
Right.
going
Okay.
and
Yeah.
mining,
Yeah.
but it
Wow.
wasn't as stable in our northern damp climate, especially if there's pyrite in there. Very quickly, sulfur decay sets in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've got these sulfuric acids building up, and the thing is cracking, failing very soon after manufacture, and the customer confidence is falling. At the same time, because these are Victorians and they're innovative, they are trying to find another material that looks and feels like jets.
Right. Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
initially they turned to the natural world. So they looked at things like papier-mâché,
Right. Okay.
um, lacquered wood. So the
Yeah.
earliest ones we see are sort of paper, which makes sense. They knew that this was fossilized wood. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
read
So
through
they
their
were
early
basically
geological
trying to
accounts. They think,
recycle it,
this
I
is a
guess.
wood product.
Yeah.
So lacquered paper mache. We also see dyed pressed cow's horn. So the hydraulically
Gosh.
pressing
Right. Okay.
cow's horn, the technique dates to 1712. But if you put black dye in there, it's a very, very convincing jet simulant. And
Wow.
because you're hydraulically pressing it, so you're heating it up
Yeah. Yeah.
and softening it,
Yeah.
you could make a mold from an original Victorian carved
Right.
brooch,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
they
Yeah.
they looked and felt and operated very much like jet. And
Wow.
when still pristine, they are incredibly good simulants. The thing with cow's horn is it is biodegradable. It's a thermoplastic material, so
Okay.
it's got a shelf life of about 150 years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Victorian pieces to date, they're starting to delaminate.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also have the invention of the rubber tire, car tire. So Charles
Yeah.
Goodyear
Yeah. Yeah.
in 1839, he's invented rubber tires. His
Yeah. Yeah.
brother actually looks at the patent, realizes if he adds extra sulfur to the mix, he can set it hard. They get a
Yes.
patent
Yeah.
to sell that as vulcanite or
Yes.
ebonite.
Yeah.
Again, when it was new, incredibly convincing simulants. Not stable in UV, so it goes a funny khaki color. If it's been in the lights, the color changes.
Right. Okay.
But again, must have been easy to produce in factories, popping these things out of the mold. Nobody's sat carving it. Nobody's having to mine for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We see
Yeah.
other weird and wonderful materials. There's a material made from milk. Again, a beautiful jet simulant called galalith or lactolith. There's a material made from blood, the black pudding of the jewelry world.
Blood.
So a French
Right.
guy
Okay.
called Charles Lepage went down his local a slaughterhouse, got a bucket of blood, took it home, powdered some rosewood, mixed it in, again hydraulically pressed it, called it bois d'Orsay, hardwood in French, and sold it under the strapline of anything Whitby Jet can do, bois d'Orsay can do, and also in brown, which generally we don't want our jet brown,
No.
but
No.
maybe
No.
it worked for him. So yeah, we've seen all these really weird and wonderful materials, and today we would class those as semi-synthetic biopolymers. They are the forerunners of modern plastics, but that word didn't exist. So the properties of jets that we were trying to describe earlier, very low specific gravity, very
Yeah.
low thermal
Yeah.
conductivity, it feels light and it feels warm, is combustible, incredibly fine-grained, intensely jet black, a really good luster. Today, we describe those as plastic. It feels plasticky, but that word
Yeah.
didn't exist.
Yeah. No. No.
So
No.
it wasn't until 1907, with the invention of polyoxybenzyl methylene glycol anhydride, which luckily for us, he patented as Bakelite or
I was going to say
casphenolic,
Bakelite.
phenol
Yeah. Yeah.
formaldehyde.
I didn't know.
Um,
I didn't know that was the formula for it. To be fair, but there you go. I was going to say Bakelite.
no, why would anybody? But
No.
yeah.
Well. No.
Just one of those
But
things. Yeah.
yeah, so that
Comes up
you
in a pub quiz once in a while, maybe.
yeah, I mean, I live for that moment, yes. But yeah, he was granted. He was a Belgian chemist and Leo Baekeland, and he was granted a patent from the United States Patent Office
Yeah.
in 1909, and was formally accredited with invented the first fully synthetic plastic.
Yeah.
But the irony is when you look at the time, I mean, they knew, you know, his contemporaries knew that this was remarkable, you know, and we've got people like General Electric saying, you know,
Yeah.
animal,
Yeah.
vegetable, mineral, have we
Yeah.
entered the fourth kingdom, the kingdom of plastics?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they very much saw it as alchemy. So there's another account that says, you know, that he's extracted phenols from coal, the scrap heap of the vegetable kingdom, and
Yeah. Yeah.
transmuted it into this amazing new substance under the sun.
Right.
But
Okay.
when we look at that today, and I would argue, and as you well know, Byron, the whole mineral classification scheme is
Yeah.
up for grabs at the minute. We
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
you know, we're no longer saying, is it organic? Is it inorganic? You know, I think there's
Yeah.
only 200 minerals on Earth that can form without life on the planet. So the vast
Yeah.
majority of minerals are biologically mediated. And when you look at how we make plastics, where do we get the raw ingredients? From
Yeah.
oil and coal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you know, that's the animal kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't. He took a material that already was, you know, full of phenols,
Yeah. Yeah.
adapted it and made another material. So we
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
argue that jet is a synthetic, is a natural plastic, you know, and I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not too far-fetched to
Yeah. Yeah.
say this is the natural version of phenol formaldehyde.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because chemically and structurally, the bonds in it are very similar to those in
All right.
bakelite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the problem
Interesting.
with jet is no piece of jet ever killed a baby seahorse,
No.
whereas we know what happened post phenol formaldehyde because that's a thermoset plastic, cannot be broken down biologically. Which jet is quite difficult to destroy. You know, there aren't any inorganic solvents that we can dissolve it in, and this is why it's difficult in a laboratory setting to simply identify it.
Yes.
And certainly in my world, you know, people will say, "Why don't you just send it to a lab, Sarah, and zap
Yeah.
it?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know what to zap it with because it
Yeah.
doesn't want to play along. It doesn't. You know, it's a coal paradox. It looks like one thing and it is something else. It
Yeah.
looks like it's formed in this way and then it
Technically,
isn't.
it was said that it's some kind of lignite, isn't it? Which, as soon as you say lignite, you mean coal, but it's not actually.
Mm.
It's not really like that, is it?
No, and that really,
Just because it's made from plants, they automatically
yeah,
think it's coal, but it's not.
yeah. And this has been a big problem. So the lignite thing came from coal petrology back in the early, you know, so coal petrologists, coal people are economic geologists. So
Yes.
if I gave them this as a piece of coal, which is what's happened with
Yeah. Yeah.
archaeology,
Yeah.
what they do is they don't look at it. They're not going to say, "Oh, that's intensely jet black and what a lovely luster." What they do immediately is they powder it,
Yeah.
mix it with resin, put it in a block, polish the block, put it under oil, fire a beam of light at it, and measure how much light is returned to the eye. So
Right.
reflected
Okay.
light microscopy, essentially. And it was noted really about 1900 that with increasing rank of coal, so increasing carbon values, reflectance also increases. So reflectance in coal is a proxy for maturity and therefore how many calories you're going to get when you burn
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all they
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
do. Burn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How hot am I going to get? So
Ah.
that's what happened with coal. And when they did that, it actually came back with a reflectance value of about zero point 0.2, which puts it in the rank of a lignite. And a lignite
Right.
is a tangible thing in the way a jet is. So lignite is a thermal grade of coal. So that
Yes.
coal can be from a peat bog, peat origin. It can be from a single tree plant origin. It can be from an algal origin or a
Yeah.
spore coal or anything in between.
Yeah.
So it isn't a tangible thing in the way that archaeologists believe that it is. So they think you could get a generic lignite, for example, which you definitely can't.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I look at lignite, so I've spent lots of time looking at lignite, certainly in the National History Museum in London, where it's one of my secondary sample suites. All the royal collections of coal from Victoria's era are in there. So because we don't mine coal anymore, it's a dirty word, really difficult for somebody like me to get access to coals to study them. But lignites, you can still see the wood structure. You can see the
Right.
cells.
Yeah.
Often it looks like a plank of wood. And I wouldn't know that was a lignite if somebody hadn't burnt it to give off the calories. So
Yeah.
more often than not, lignites still look recognizably like wood. They can be light brown, they can have branches, or it looks like
Yeah.
peat, for example. So nobody ever said, hang on a minute, that's a really high reflective index. The refractive index on this is not 0.2. Nobody
No.
ever did that,
No.
which is astonishing. So if they've been looking for a lignite, they're going to find a lignite, but it doesn't mean Jet's a lignite. So in the 1980s and 1990s, the Spanish government paid for a few fully funded PhDs to try and
Okay.
kickstart the Spanish jet
Yeah.
industry. They were all coal petrologists that did them, and they realized that jet is the best example of any material on the planet that exhibits something called reflectance suppression. So all that means is when we test that using oil submersion reflected light microscopy, it gives an erroneous value. It gives a lignite value.
Right.
If we went to the jet rock, took a sample of jet rock and test the thermal maturity of that rock, it's a subbituminous rank. That rock has gone through the oil window.
Yeah.
And jet has gone through the oil window. So it can generate petroleum products. And that's not something we would see normally in lignite. It's just not had that level of exposure to heat and pressure. That was very much corrected in the 1980s and 90s. That has not filtered into either the British archaeological data or the gemological data. We're still very much stuck in the 1800s. And we haven't even mentioned the monkey puzzle myth. But
No. Well, that was it's, looking at my questions. It's the next on my list. To be fair, it says, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about jet? So there you go. That was my next question on my list.
First one is not a lignite, a way better quality material than that. It would actually be, a subbituminous ranking coal if, God forbid, we should burn it. But
I was always told that it was you could burn it, but it doesn't give off an awful lot of heat. But also the fumes are actually mildly toxic. Is that right?
Well, I mean, you don't want to really sniff any coal, do you? But
no. But I heard that it might be carcinogenic.
I mean, probably.
Because I mean, obviously, a lot of the jet manufacturers were producing, polishing the jet, and they would get a lot of it when you polish it. It actually comes out kind of like a very reddish brown color, and so they get that dust on them, and obviously inhale that as well, because obviously at that time they didn't have any, and that actually produced a lot of deaths from inhaling it. Similar to the gem bone industry at the minute is over in the Morrison Formation. That's if when you're cutting that, you don't want to be breathing any of that in because it's highly radioactive. And that has caused cancers in the past. You need to always do it wet.
I think most of us do work it wet. I mean, some of them, there's only 5 of us left in Whitby that work it. But it's interesting when you look at
everybody else is out on the outskirts or elsewhere. I mean, there's a lot of people in. I know an awful lot of the jets going down to London at the minute as well, isn't it?
Who knows?
Well.
But you hear these tales of it going to New York and God only knows where.
I mean, there's a whole podcast on the politics of jet mining and probably fossils for that matter. I'm sure.
Jet wars. Yeah, it's always been a sort of a divisive industry. But when you look at the health records for the Victorians, what they do say is the health of the jet workers was much better than the average population because they
Right,
were
okay. Yeah.
inside and warm.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously compared with going
Yeah,
to sea,
yeah, yeah.
but
Yes, of
almost
course.
all the jet workers die of alcoholic poisoning. That seems to be an overwhelming thing. So they have
Right.
lots of money and not much to spend it on, and lots
Yeah.
of pubs.
Lots of gin,
Oh,
hopefully. Sorry,
yeah,
lots of gin.
port records.
Yeah, it was
They're
either
quite
ale or gin, wasn't it? It was
yeah,
the tipple of
yeah,
the day and,
yeah. I think there
uh,
was something like 23 pubs on Church Street itself, you know, so you could
probably
come
still
out
is. No, and probably
4
getting that way
o'clock
as well
and into
again.
the so yeah, there
So
was
let's go for the question that I said about earlier. The misconceptions about jet, what are they?
well, the one that I upset people almost every day is the monkey puzzle thing.
Yeah, yeah, well, you're telling me off all the time about it, I know.
No, well, you see, the problem is before geology was a thing, you know, in its infancy, and
Yeah,
gentlemen antiquarians would go out on a Sunday afternoon and collect fossils. If they collected something that looked vegetal, let's say,
yeah, okay.
in origin, they would describe it as Araucarian material because in
Okay.
1793, the Chilean pine, Araucaria
Yes.
oricana,
Yeah,
had
yeah.
been
Was
introduced to
fashionable.
Britain, and this
Yeah.
is the most trendy plant anybody's ever
Yeah,
seen.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
plant it extensively everywhere,
yeah,
and it's a curiosity because they understand that it's not phototropic, it's not gonna grow towards the light because it's so old, so primitive.
yeah, yeah.
But when they're finding these fossils, whether it be in the coal mines or perhaps in Whitby, and they see something that is clearly fossil wood, they call it Araucarian material.
Okay,
What
okay.
happens then is paleobotany develops as a discipline,
Yes.
particularly in a mining environment, the coal
Yes.
mines, obviously where
Yeah, yeah,
most
yeah, yeah, yeah.
paleobotany was done. They realize that this isn't all the same species, and the paleobotanists go in and they give them lovely names, and
Yeah, yeah.
people understand that these aren't all the same species. None of these are anything to do with the monkey puzzle tree. That's never happened in Whitby. We are still stuck in 1830, where we're talking about our Araucarian material.
Isn't there a paper about, I think somebody's thin sectioned some jet once, and the cell structure was very much like, an Araucaria tree. That was only one specimen though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there hasn't ever been a paper published, a British paper published. The problem with paleobotany on jets are that piece I showed you with the nice fossils. I don't know that you can
yeah, yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is a variety of jet that we call cord jets. So you've got jetonized material,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
black.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Here we've got mineralized material, and that
Alright,
mineralized
yeah.
material can either be quartz based or it can be
Right, yeah.
carbonate minerals. In some of these specimens within the core, plant cells are preserved.
Right, okay.
Only jet we could ever do paleobotany on is the core of a cord jet piece.
Right, okay.
So there's a number of issues here. We don't know why some jets are cord and some jets are not cord.
Right, so
Almost
that
certainly
probably more likely gonna be a difference in the species and stuff like that
species.
probably, and the structure.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
In Whitby Museum, we have a paper that I don't believe was ever published by Professor Hemingway and a paleobotanist, forgotten his name, famous early 20th century paleobotanist. Anyway,
Sorry,
they
I've no idea.
they are doing paleobotany on the cord specimens at Whitby Museum, so only on the cord, and they suggest two species, Whitbyensis and
Yes.
Dodocilon gagates, gagate being the
Yeah, yeah,
Latin word
yeah,
for jet.
okay, yeah.
So I've identified the holotypes of those two materials. They are at Whitby Museum. Every botanist I've spoken to, paleobotanist, does not recognise those two names. I suspect that paper was never published.
Right,
I
okay.
can't even find that Dodocilon is a recognisable species either. But what they also say is, from what they're seeing, they look like much higher order conifers than Araucarian. But the present day Araucaria we have, I think it's 42 extant species
Yes.
members of that family, and they range from massive versions, the Norfolk pine, to
Yeah, yeah.
house plants.
Yeah, yeah.
To the problem isn't the word oricarium, because some of this material might be Oricariacea, but it isn't Oricaria oricana, the monkey puzzle, and
Yeah.
it's become fossilized monkey puzzle because that's the recognizable Oricaria for most Brits.
Yeah, no,
Essentially,
I think that's mainly where the misconceptions come from, is because particularly shop owners, particularly myself
yeah,
included, when they're trying to describe it to somebody, the easiest way to describe something is to try and describe it to something that they will recognise, and that's the easiest way to do that, is to say, oh, like the belemnites, the nearest thing it could look like is a cuttlefish, because everybody then knows, oh yeah, I know what a cuttlefish is. And same with the ammonites. It was like a nautilus or an octopus or whatever, even though it was wasn't related to an octopus, but in the tree of life it had a common ancestor and all that. But that's the easiest thing to. It's an easy cop out. That's what I'm saying. It's
well,
an
it is
easy
a
cop
little bit
out.
of a copper. I think we can safely say it was like a tree, if you want to use
No, well,
that.
I mean, during that time, during the Jurassic period, there would have been all sorts of different trees
They would have. I mean,
um,
some of these things might be
on
small
land.
shrubs,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
anything that was woody in essence, because all you appear to need to make jet is cellulose and lignin, which is completely destroyed in the process. So it's weird. And I remember when I first came to Whitby, and certainly in the Victorian accounts, there are accounts of jetonized fish. And I always forget, what's the species? Those
yes.
with the black shiny
The
scales?
lepidotes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They occur roughly in the same horizons. The best
It
ones
makes
come from
sense
the same
why.
horizon, but
So
yeah,
there was
there was
this debate,
reference to the
you know.
jetonized fish, but actually they aren't. They're not.
No, no, no.
I mean, there's been a lot of people ask me, have you got a jet ammonite? It's like,
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
occur like that, because
No, no,
you
you
might
you
get them
need those
impressed onto the
botanical.
jet,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
never find them as jet. No.
No.
Um, no, interesting. But I mean, there like anything. You look at any forest. There is a whole host of different trees. I mean, back then there wouldn't have been any deciduous trees, because deciduous trees didn't quite evolve until later in the Cretaceous period. But so it would have been more fir trees and tree ferns and ginkgos and things like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so there's probably a great catchment of different types of plant material that's then forming into jet.
Yeah, and we don't actually know where the wood even comes from. If we look at the ammonites in the Cleveland Basin, you've got,
Yeah,
maybe some species are, Mediterranean, some are
yeah, yeah,
subarboreal.
yeah,
So the wood, if you look at studies by the Smithsonian looking at driftwood, they
yeah,
seem to suggest that woods can stay afloat for 2 years and maybe travel
yeah, yeah,
1,000 miles
yeah,
before it
yeah,
sinks.
yeah,
So many different species. Species almost certainly is playing a role in Whitby, because you've got cord jets and non-cord jets and
yeah, yeah.
partially cord ones,
And
and
and then and then
so,
and then well, we haven't gone into it yet, but I mean, you get hard jet and soft jet, which is
yeah,
clearly some kind of,
yeah,
maybe some chemical alteration, or a horizontal
mhm,
depositional
yeah,
difference. Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So you got a lot of things going on. Yeah, yeah,
But at the end of the day, the jewelry trade and the public like the monkey puzzle myth, so it's very difficult to get
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's like Vikings with horned helmets.
yeah, yeah,
What they like
yeah,
it.
yeah,
There's always going to be, monkey puzzle relate. But it's interesting to talk to people about that, and you can talk about the geology and because they come in with that question
Yeah,
to
yeah,
start with. You know,
yeah.
everybody knows on the pub quiz question that Jet's fossilized monkey puzzles. So
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
bad guy saying, hang on a minute. No, you know, no bit for sure has been identified as Oricaria. The Spanish stuff, the best quality Spanish jet is believed to be Agathopsilon asturiensis,
okay.
which is not an Oricariacea. But we're never going to know because there are no cells preserved in
No, no,
jetonized
no,
wood,
no,
so
no.
we don't know.
So tell us all about the Ebor jet work. So you have been doing all the research, but predominantly you've been working jet as into jewelry form for what the past, I'm going to be polite now, 20 years. Um,
Yeah, it's 44 years actually, which does, I think, makes me one of the longer, you know, operational jet manufacturers in Whitby.
yeah,
44 years.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And so and you've got the Ebor Jet Works, which is one of the shops in the actual centre of Whitby itself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, tell us all about it. I think what people might be interested in is what goes into transforming a piece of jet into into a finished piece of jewelry. That might be interesting for people, I think.
Yeah, so obviously we've got to find it. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need,
sure.
you know, and you to be a jet work is really odd because it is a way of life.
Yeah,
Like other aspects of the jewelry trade, other stone cutting trades, people that I interact with within the trade. Because, you know, we're pretty unique in that all we do is jet. You know, yes, we might mix it with a bit of amber and a bit of Fordite and a bit of
yeah,
turquoise,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
jet really, and that way of life is our way of life. The ones that work it as in the traditional way. So, you know, we have to go on the beach. We've got to, you know, you've got to have a reasonable understanding of the tides. You've got to know where to look,
yeah, yeah,
what to look for, you know, and it isn't particularly common, as you said. So you've got to source the material. And then really the methods we use to produce it have changed very little since
yeah.
the Neolithic. You
Yeah,
know,
because it
I
is
can,
quite soft.
it's
When
quite
I say
soft.
soft, I mean it's
Yeah, it is. From a gem perspective, it's
yeah,
soft,
yeah, yeah. So
slightly
so what?
less
So
than middling.
for those who are more learned geologists out there, so on the Moa scale, it's what 2, 3,
Well, let's give it, so we'll give them Mohs equivalent of maybe 3.5 to
3 and a
4.
half. Yeah, yeah.
But there's in the
So 10 would be diamond,
diamond. Yeah,
and 1 would be talc.
talc.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
so
difficult.
talcum powder that you have very, very soft.
Yeah,
Calcite is about 2, I believe, which
3.
basically you can scratch it with your
Yeah.
fingernail. Whereas obviously the only thing that polishes diamonds is other diamonds, or I think there's a couple of other things, but they're synthetic. So jet is on the lower end of that
It is.
that scale.
And
So about 3. So you can actually work it with pocket knives and things like that traditionally.
yeah. So the reason that jet's been used for at least 26,000 years is you can achieve a mirror-like luster with very little in the way of
Yeah,
material-specific tools.
yeah,
So as long as you have a home stone, something like shark skin or another animal hide, and something like animal fat and jeweler's rouge, which is iron oxide, which certainly we know, you know, prehistory they had iron oxides, ochre
yeah, yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
You can create a mirror-like luster.
yeah,
So they could easily produce this highly polished, lustrous material. And that's probably, you know, the main reason why it's been used for thousands of years.
yeah, yeah,
And if need be, if the lights went out tomorrow, I could manufacture my jet without electricity.
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
you know, it's more difficult to do that with harder gem species.
yes, yeah, yeah,
So, and obviously in the way, so mine's just a tiny little 17th century cottage. It is, I guess, a true cottage industry, really. So we manufacture so people can see us making it and then retail directly to the public. And because the way we do that, we can argue that jet is the most environmentally, these
Yeah,
words like responsible,
ethically sourced.
ethical, that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
thrown about.
yeah,
Jet truly is a responsible and ethical industry in the way we are doing it. If you go and collect a loose sea-wash piece of jet and you manufacture it and you retail it.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
we've probably got, let's say, less than 4 miles mine to market.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, obviously, we're not mining it, we're loose connection, but less than 4 miles carbon footprint, and there is
yeah, yeah,
no other gem or jewelry industry on earth that can make that claim.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, it is a really sort of unique industry for Whitby and not as appreciated as it should be. Most of us that work this material are at retirement age. There aren't many young people coming into the industry. It
no,
could go on our watch. Jet industry could go. We lost half the industry this year. Half the shops have gone in the last 12
yeah,
months.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we're down to 5 people still working it as a way of
yeah,
life in
yes,
town,
yeah,
unless there are
yeah,
other people that,
yeah,
do a little bit of jet
yeah,
or
it's
jet and something else, jet and fossil,
changed a
whatever.
lot in Whitby,
But yeah,
for
it's
different reasons really, rather than economic. Um, but yeah, I mean, is there still a strong demand for Whitby Jet, do you think?
yeah, 'cause I mean, we're lucky really that,
Is it becoming more and more fashionable again, or
we are in a boom time, definitely.
yeah,
We've been in a
yeah,
boom since the, late 1980s, really. I mean, it was astonishing that the Victorian, well, it did collapse and didn't even really talk about that. But when
yeah,
it
yeah,
collapsed, it was absolutely catastrophic. We couldn't compete with plastic.
yeah.
And we'd had the problem of vampires. So Bram Stoker's come to Whitby,
Oh,
he's
right, yeah,
penned Dracula.
yeah,
And in the face of Dracula, immortality becomes monstrous. And he tells us that deep below our feet in Whitby, that there's this material that was once alive that's now preserved for all eternity in death. Jet is in a vampiric state.
right,
And that
okay,
was the inspiration for Dracula. So because of that, really, and Dracula was quite taboo when it was released. It was, there were
yeah,
all these like closeted sort of like sexual references. You've got
yeah, absolutely.
blood-sucking vampires.
If anybody's not actually read Bram Stoker's Dracula, I yeah, I would highly recommend reading it. There is, yeah, I mean, for the time, it was,
It's
ooh,
controversial,
yeah, a bit
but
kind
and
of,
we were
a
tarred
bit
with that
hot.
brush, unfortunately, very much tarred with that brush.
Yeah,
So we've got plastic and we've got the vampire, and then we've had
yeah,
75 years of doing
yeah,
death as a fashion trend.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
obviously moving into the First World War, nobody's gonna wanna
No,
celebrate death after that.
no.
But even when the mines were exhausted, they'd brought all this material in from France, from Spain, from Venezuela. We imported tons to America as well.
Wow, yeah.
Some jets,
Because
some not
I
jets.
mean, that's one thing that people probably don't realise is that that Whitby Jet is actually found all over the world. It's just that,
Well,
um,
jets are, yes, jets
yeah,
are. Yeah.
I would say probably the best. Well, I would be biased, but I mean the best quality is actually from Whitby area. I would have thought.
Yeah, it is. Ours is the best quality in the world because it has exceptional stability as a
Yeah, yeah,
geological product.
yeah, yeah,
It
and
doesn't have
that's probably
high risk.
probably due to the hydrocarbons, probably.
Yeah, high level of hydrocarbons, the right hydrocarbons as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Lots of the Cretaceous jets, very different species, formed in a different way, don't have the coherence. Their oils are coming from other sources, don't have the coherence of ours. Um, but yeah, there are other like massive reserves in the northeast of Turkey, excellent quality material. So there
yeah.
are huge, there are 300 operational mines in Turkey today.
Wow,
There are
wow,
whole shopping malls in the
wow,
town of Altu that every shop's a jet shop. I mean, it was like
wow.
my idea of heaven, to
Yeah,
go to a shopping mall and every
yeah,
shop's a jet shop.
yeah,
These people are out there and they're doing what we do. They're just doing it in an area of the world that nobody knows they're doing
yeah,
it,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
beyond the immediate area.
I mean, the other type of customers changed over the years, do you think, as well? You know, like you were saying about, the vampiric, period, the Victorian times, that was morning. Then you got that Bram Stoker coming out. Do you think it's changed a lot? I mean, obviously, it's now. Obviously, predominantly, if anybody knows Whitby, they know that there's a goth weekend twice a year.
Mm, mm.
So all the goths come in, and more. They obviously wear a lot of black, and therefore, it's very, very popular for those. But is there any other area of society that it must be quite fashionable still?
Yeah, so I mean, I do a lot of conference talking all around
Yeah,
the world, and I talk about carbon-based industries. Obviously,
yeah,
I often compare and contrast the diamond and the jet industry.
yeah, yeah,
How do we have 5,500 years longevity? How am I still sat here today as a Whitby jet manufacturer when flint napping's gone? When you
yeah,
look at
yeah,
all
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
Paleolithic
yeah,
and
yeah,
Neolithic industries.
yeah.
And what I generally say is what we do have here is incredibly strong material culture. So Jet has amazing stories and it's got 5,500 years of them. And it gives something of the sense of identity, the materiality of place for Whitby. So Whitby's absolutely on the global heritage tourism trail.
Yeah,
They're coming
yeah,
for the vampire, they're coming for the abbey, they're
yeah,
coming
yeah,
for the fossils, they're coming for the jets.
yeah, yeah,
And when you
yeah,
get here, you're gonna wanna buy a fossil, you're gonna wanna buy a piece of jet,
yeah,
and even those
yeah.
that didn't know about jet before they arrive, by the end of the street, they have to have some. And then the largest growing religion on earth is actually paganism. Certainly in the British
Right,
Isles,
okay. Right,
paganism
okay, yeah,
is growing exponentially. And whether the new pagan beliefs have any grounding in jet culture is debatable. I would say,
yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
they've rewritten the meaning of this material. So certainly throughout the medieval period, jet has this association with counter witchcraft.
Okay, okay.
Modern witches, let's say, have really embraced it. And since people like Gerald Gardner in the 60s, jet became known as the witch's stone. You'll often see online
Right, okay,
references to the witch's stone.
okay.
When I ask certainly Wiccan practitioners why they call jet the witch's stone, they don't know. They don't know.
Right, okay,
I know that it came from it's the not witch's stone. It repels witches.
okay.
But they've very much taken it as the witch's stone as their own. So we do have a lot of pagan and sort of, let's say, crystal practitioners that need a
Yeah,
piece
yeah,
of this
yeah, yeah,
material
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
So certainly there is a demand there, which is new.
yeah,
This
yeah,
material spent thousands of years repelling witches, and now they all want a piece.
yeah, yeah,
So, but the thing with jet is it is culturally adaptable like a chameleon. We don't care what god we worship. So whoever the gods were in the Bronze Age, we were probably, their
yeah, yeah,
biggest
yeah,
advocate. Isis in Roman times,
yeah,
we will serve
yeah.
Isis. There were other Roman gods, probably Cybele or Kybele, people like Bacchus, possibly Jet was sacred to Bacchus.
Okay, yeah,
Then certainly Catholic Catholicism, we haven't talked about that. Jet was so associated with Catholicism. Certainly in Spain, it was a pilgrim material, or,
right, okay,
if
yeah,
you look at early modern portraiture, all of the Catholic queens are bedecked in jet. Of
right,
course, that
okay,
all changes for
yeah,
Whitby with the dissolution of the monasteries and
yeah,
Henry VIII.
yeah, yeah.
He has to break from Rome, and essentially he makes jet manufacturing illegal because jet's been manufactured in the
Really?
monasteries.
Right,
So
okay.
as soon as the monasteries dissolution, if you are stopped and searched and jet is found on your person in the 16th century, you are going to be going to court facing a charge
Wow,
of treason.
wow.
And there are
I didn't know
many,
that.
many
Yeah,
examples of
wow,
that happening.
wow.
Certainly, under Elizabeth I, the crucifix and the rosary are entirely banned, and that probably was our staple product here in Whitby
Right, yeah, yeah,
at
yeah,
that
yeah,
time
yeah,
period
yeah,
because we were
yeah,
manufacturing, we just didn't write about it.
yeah, yeah,
So this material essentially goes occult. It goes underground. It has to by necessity.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's astonishing it survived that at all. But we were
yes,
happy to do Protestantism as well. And when we'll do anything, we just don't care. So
yeah, yeah,
today, when the demand seems to be pagan, I think it's picking up on the wicked effect as well. Little girls don't want necessarily Prince Charming to come along with a 10-carat sparkling
yeah,
diamond.
yeah,
They want to be powerful, autonomous, free-thinking women with pockets. Jet
yeah, yeah,
is it's more palatable perhaps. So I think Whitby does pick up on the whole wicked
Yeah,
event
yeah,
effect,
interesting,
and it's a bit
interesting.
like Glastonbury, isn't it? We get so many people come to our shop and they said, "Oh my god, it's just like Glastonbury." I think Whitby and Glastonbury
Yeah,
are these. We've got all the goths and
yeah,
all the
yeah,
death, and
yeah,
they've got
yeah,
all the
yeah,
wizards and the
yeah. I mean,
fairies. But
if anybody's
uh,
not visited during Goth Weekend, I mean, it's the most politest people you'll ever get to meet, but you'll see some interesting, probably very expensive clothing as well.
yeah,
Um, no, this has been absolutely fascinating. I mean, I mean, we could talk for another half an hour or more, I'm sure. But we'll try and round it off. We have got a quick fire round, so we have got a few more questions here,
okay,
and then we'll tie it all up. So quick fire round, and don't worry because it ain't the same questions every week. Every time I do it, so we have got different ones.
okay.
So, what's the weirdest thing that's ever been mistaken for jet? Apart from obviously Bakelite and glass and what what else could it be?
Weirdest thing. Hmm. I don't know. I mean, the most common thing I get brought in is just a piece of cliff. It's not
Yeah,
even
yeah,
white.
piece of
It's not
shale.
even black.
Yeah, it's not even black.
And
No.
the lengths people will carry 2 stone of shale is
Yeah,
astonishing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, they come in and they
oh,
get it in through the door and you
we haven't
slap it on the
actually
bench.
mentioned it, but if you get a piece of wet and dry sandpaper, if you mark it across it, if it comes out ginger brown or chocolate brown, it tends to be jet. If it comes out white or black, it's not jet, and that's quickest way to tell when you're on
Yeah.
the beach. A piece of wet and dry sandpaper and mark it across there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
if you use a white rock, everything draws brown, so
yeah,
they've
yeah,
invariably they've
yeah.
tested it on a wet
Yeah, well,
rock,
I
but
get a lot of like normal driftwood, and they've gone, oh well, I marked it across a piece of thing, and it comes out
yeah,
brown. Well, it will
yeah,
do because it's brown.
yeah.
What's your favourite gemstone apart from jet? See, I'm putting you on the spot now, aren't I?
Yeah, no,
Because there's
so, yeah,
either too many to
turquoise,
choose from.
actually. Turquoise.
Yeah, turquoise is a nice one, but and turquoise is not exactly a very common thing either, and it only I believe that it only comes from Americas, I believe.
We do have Cornish turquoise, so
Oh,
that's
yes,
maybe for
we do, a very, very
another
small amount
podcast.
in Cornwall, we do, yeah, but I
Yeah,
don't think it was ever made into jewellery, was it?
it's not great. It's not
No, no,
great.
it's
And
great
it's
for a
there,
mineral
but
specimen,
it's
but not
just
yeah, yeah.
not brilliant.
Best beach on the Yorkshire coast, and I should really put best beach on the Yorkshire coast to find jet maybe, or just
Well,
best beach on the Yorkshire coast.
my favourite is Saltic.
Yeah, yeah,
Not the best for jet.
no, no,
Best for jet, you wanna go north of Whitby, really.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, the most bits that I've ever found in jet have always been either underneath the Abbey,
yeah, yeah,
or at Brunswick.
yeah, yeah,
That's the 2 places where you're gonna have a better chance of finding something. Um,
yes.
yeah. Uh, I think we've probably already covered this question, but I'll say it anyway. What's the one myth about Whitby Jet you'd love to kill forever? It's probably a loaded question, probably the monkey puzzle tree, probably, but I could have answered that for you. But is there another one?
I can cope with the monkey puzzle tree. The lignite one is more problematic for
Yeah,
me
yeah, okay, yeah,
academically,
yeah, yeah,
because it has been repeated and cited in
yes,
academic texts for
yeah,
100
yeah, yeah,
years, and
yeah,
when you get that sort of Chinese whispers repetition of a mistruth in an academic text, for me, trying to do a PhD, I'm the outlier. I'm the one that's saying, "No, it's not,"
yeah,
and everybody else who's very well respected has said it is. So that's very difficult. And the other one that's really difficult is that most of the academic texts on jet say that it can be black, brown, grey,
yeah,
beige.
yeah, yeah,
Jet, of course, can only be jet black
yeah,
within reason
yeah.
when you
The whole,
every
I mean, we could probably spend a whole podcast talking about all the um, what's the right word? I can't even pronounce it. All the common words you get from the jet industry as well. I mean, jet black
of
was only coined because of the jet industry.
Yeah, I mean, it probably does predate William Shakespeare, but he uses some version of black as jet in, I think, 3 different plays. So
Yeah.
he certainly made it popular. But everybody, so if you look at the Greeks, the Romans, Pliny the Elder, the Venerable Bede, Solinus, everybody says jet is jet black. There is
Yeah.
no question
Yeah.
until the 1830s when the first archaeologists start digging up burials and they go, "Ooh, jets." And then they'd retrospectively, forensically define the material from grave assemblages. And
Yeah.
of course, some of it was jet
Yeah.
and some of it was oil
Well,
shales or cannel
yeah.
coals.
Yeah.
But once those values enter the academic
Yes.
pipeline,
Yeah.
they will be cited.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when
I know
archaeologists
exactly. I know exactly how that works because
Mm,
at the minute you've got your jet, but I'm battling the fact that every ammonite that has got a bit missing out of it is being bitten by
bits.
something.
Yeah.
Which is for me personally, there may be, but unfortunately, there's 1,000 different ways for a fossil for it to die and for you to find it, and everything in that process can happen.
Yeah.
So I personally think it's it's a bit like a submarine going up and down the water column. So I think it actually these bits that are missing on ammonites are actually uh, not underwater explosions. That's not the right word, but pressure valves bursting. That's my personal opinion. But I could actually, I could have done a PhD and just got into some labs and actually done that
Yeah.
under under experiments. But unfortunately, no funding available. But anyway, I digress. This has been absolutely fascinating. It's been great, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on. Like I say, we could have gone for at least another half an hour, and it's always 1 hour, 1 hour and a half already. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you, and where
So,
can they
yeah.
read more about it?
Okay, so I'm at the Uber Jet Works. We have also bought the old Whitby Jet Heritage Centre, which
Yeah,
is the only Victorian workshop
yeah,
left actually on the planet. It's important beyond Whitby and the jet industry here from a lapidary perspective. We're just trying to renovate, do conservation on that. Had quite bad woodworm, which is not
oh
what you
gosh,
want
yeah,
in a
no, we
wooden.
want
But
on wood machinery,
so
no.
yeah, we are desperately tradesmen allowing want to get that open,
Yeah.
hopefully in the next month,
Are
and
you
then
turning that into the jet
yeah,
museum, or yeah?
it's still it's gonna have to be a shop because I have to make it pay at
All
the
right,
minute.
yeah,
We tried to fund it from this, but
yeah,
as you can see behind me, I've got thousands of antique
yeah, yeah,
objects
yeah,
we
yeah,
would like to be able to put on permanent display.
yeah, yeah,
So we're definitely gonna have display space down there as well that we can do,
yeah, yeah,
maybe rotate the exhibition. I'm also curator of Jet at Whitby Museum, so we've
yeah,
got
yeah.
some astonishing jet
Oh,
pieces up
I
there.
mean, if
So
anybody's been to a museum, it's incredible. Some of the stuff. I mean, not just a jet, but also you've got the whole history of in and around Whitby. So you've got lots of fossils, some amazing fossils, um, lots of holotypes there, but also whaling, archaeology, the Hand of Glory. We'll come back to the Hand of Glory another time.
and it
But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, the Whitby Museum is absolutely fantastic. So if you've never been, please do go.
Yeah, definitely worth a visit. It's like a Victorian curiosity cabinet, so it really
Yeah,
hasn't been modernised in the
yeah,
way that
yeah,
lots of
absolutely.
museums
Yeah,
have. So,
yeah, yeah,
as a Victorian museum, definitely worth a trip.
yeah. That's great. So thank you again, Sarah, for coming on today. This has been the Fossil Fundamentals podcast brought to you by fossilsuk.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. Leave a review and a comment. Please share the podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. And as always, keep searching on the beaches because you never know what you might find.